The internet has made it easier than ever to start a business. Succeeding on the internet, now that's another story. The big question is, what are those who are succeeding doing differently? This podcast has the answers. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix podcast. I'm your host, Lisanne Murphy, and I'm super excited to be here with you today for this episode of the Marketing Matrix. Seriously, guys, I have been thinking about this episode for a very, very long time. So it is about time that I delivered it to you. Before I do, though, I just want to thank the listeners, guys. This podcast has been in existence for 11 months. Can you believe that? 11 months since the Marketing Matrix started, and it has grown so much. And it's thanks to you guys, my listeners. So I just want to give a huge thank you for consuming the Marketing Matrix content and being a part of the community and showing up so that I can continue to deliver amazing marketing content to you guys. All right. So today's topic, I'm really, really excited to share with you. When I bring a client into the agency, one of the first things that I have to do is make sure that their assets are ad ready. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I need to make sure that their website, their funnels, their email sequence, everything, that it's ready for paid traffic. Everything has to look right. And one of the biggest things that I have to check is to make sure that things are mobile optimized, mobile responsive, mobile ready. Okay, now what do I mean by that? But now before we talk about that, I want to take you back. Remember when we would sign up for a webinar? You'd choose a specific date within the next week. You'd block out your schedule. It was literally an event. And then when you got on the webinar, the person on the webinar would say, all right, so make sure that you're in a room by yourself, shut the door, close all your tabs, turn your phone off, tell your family you're occupied for the next 90 minutes because I am going to teach you something that's going to change your life. And we actually listened, right? It was like attending an online webinar was literally an event. Okay. Do you remember those days? Well, the chances are is that you haven't actually done one of those days in a long time. And there's a reason for that. This was when most of the social traffic was on desktop because smartphones were not the norm, okay? But smartphones with social applications have changed the landscape for how people consume content literally forever. Like, when do you sign up for a webinar? It's not like as you're like taking a break from work and checking your email or like popping over to social media. You're signing up for it as you're like on a commercial break on a TV show that you're watching, or you're standing in line at the grocery store, or you're waiting in line to pick up your kids from school. Like, those are the times when you're seeing these ads for webinars and you're signing up. And most of the webinars now are auto playing webinars. It's not one where like you sign up for something in the future, because who has time to like exit out of that screen and then in their phone go make an event on the calendar? Like, no one does that. So they play it auto because people know that on their phones, they have to consume it immediately. Okay. So that's been a huge change in the landscape of how webinars are delivered, because people aren't taking the time to be on desktop and make sure that it's in their calendar and all that stuff anymore. They're consuming content immediately. Okay. That's a conversation for another day. Today, we're talking about mobile optimization. But the origination of smartphones and having social applications on those smartphones, it changed every media channel and industry indefinitely. Okay. And ads were no different. Funnels and websites, no different. In a period of 2 years, we went from 5% mobile traffic to 95% mobile traffic. And believe it or not, it's still climbing. The amount of traffic that's happening on desktop is getting smaller and smaller all the time. And here's what's crazy. While the traffic sources are changing, how websites and funnels are conceptualized and designed are not. Okay, let me reiterate this. How traffic is coming to a site is changing. And so people have made changes like creating the auto webinar and things like that. But what hasn't changed is the actual design of the funnel that people come to from an ad itself. Okay. Hopefully some light bulbs are going off, because this is a huge deal. If you speak to anyone in the design world, they will say something like this. Okay, yeah, well, I'm designing your funnel and then I will optimize it for mobile. Of course, I'll optimize it for mobile. What does that mean? They might tweak a couple headlines. They might just make sure that it's set to responsive, but like that's about it. Like there really isn't that much. But here's the big problem with this. Why would you optimize for something that is the primary target? Why would you optimize for something that 95% of the traffic is going to? That is such a silly, silly concept. In reality, you should design for mobile and then optimize for desktop. I mean, if we're being honest, it's important that it does show well on desktop for the few people that are working or using social media on their laptop as they're working, or just prefer to consume media on their laptop. So many might say, well, my website is responsive, so I'm covered. But think again. Responsive means that it won't shrink, that like your website won't shrink to be itty bitty on your mobile screen. And that's what responsive means, but it doesn't mean that everything will show properly on mobile to create a good, congruent, smooth user experience. Because here's the thing. Not only is more traffic mobile, but people viewing content on mobile are also more picky. They're more impatient. Think about it. If you're on desktop, how long are you willing to wait for a screen to load? 5, 10 seconds maybe. If it's too long, you might even go to another tab and do something and then come back. But on mobile, if it doesn't load literally within a half a second, you're like, peace, I'm out. And then you bounce without even thinking about it. Because you're probably doing something else at the same time you're on your phone. There's just a different energy with people when it comes to consuming content on desktop versus mobile. Okay, when people are on their mobile, they're just in more of a hurry. They're in the middle of doing something else. So like to wait for a website to load, it's like, no, thank you, I'm out. So hopefully by now, it has been convincing that you need to design for mobile. And again, I would argue, don't optimize for mobile, design for mobile. Okay, so here are a few tips and ideas that I give my funnel builders to help them build for mobile first and then optimize for desktop. Okay, optimizing for desktop, we're not going to talk about that today because it's actually pretty obvious, especially if you're using a good funnel designer. But designing for mobile, here are some things to think about. I'm going to give you 5 tips for optimizing for mobile, okay? Tip number 1, design in a single column, okay? When you are looking at desktop and a mobile, because the screen is rectangular like this, people will often set up 2, 3, 4, even 5 columns to design different graphics in. Like, for example, you'll have an image on one side and then a submission form on the other side. Or you'll have an image and then a form and then a testimonial column or something like that. Like there's lots of columns going on. But with mobile, when you switch to a responsive view, those columns get jumbled up and the images are just kind of placed randomly, and it often doesn't make sense for a smooth experience. So in order to design for mobile first, you should design in a single column to ensure that it shows up visually exactly the way that you want it to show up for the users. If you are designing for desktop first, make sure that your mobile view is based off of one column. You might need to get rid of some of the elements in the second column altogether. Okay. Number 2, you need to have less white space. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? You need to, first of all, when you're designing for desktop, the name of the game is white space, and you want to use the white space to draw the eye to certain places. Well, the white space on a mobile phone, let's be honest, it's tiny. It is like no bigger than the size of the palm of my hand. Okay, it is absolutely tiny. So you have that real estate is important, and actually white space on mobile view, it causes people to feel like it's disorganized. There's not enough information. And so people bounce. So you should actually do less white space. When there's like a break in a section, like move the text right up to the edge of it. Decrease your padding size. Make sure the space between the headline and the sub-headline is not that big. Take out those, like on desktop, how like there's a line in between things and then there's big spaces on each. Take that out. Decrease white space. Okay. The eye, it's a lot easier to scan and read what's on a mobile phone very quickly because it's a small confined space than it is on a wide desktop that's like a 13-inch desktop, all right? Another piece with the white space is get rid of that giant logo on top. A lot of people will have like a huge logo on their funnel, their website, but then when it shows up on mobile, then that logo takes up like a third of the screen. That is wasted real estate space. Okay, guys, I hate to break it to you, but like no one cares about your logo with ads. They just don't. They want to know what result your product or service can get them. So get rid of that logo and use that space to actually share something that's interesting that they care about. Number 3, look closely at the headline and subheadline. Okay, there's 2 things to work with here. First is wording, and the second is font size. So when I'm talking about wording, what I mean here is that sometimes you can do a really long headline on desktop that would take more than the whole screen on mobile, and it's got to be shortened, right? Those headlines where it's like, check out the 3 secrets where I do this, this, and this without this, this, and this for you to accomplish this, this, and this. And it's like really, really long. Might be great for desktop, but on mobile, you got to be more succinct. You got to be clear, and you have to leave space for a subheadline and especially a call to action, and perhaps even some scarcity and urgency as well. So make sure the wording is succinct and straightforward, and that the font size makes sense. Now, what I mean by font size is when you create a font size that makes sense on desktop, oftentimes what responsive is like, it will have like the first 4 words of your headline be like extra big in mobile, and like half of the word will be on a line, and then the second half of the word will be on the next line. And yeah, it's like responsive kind of, but not really. It's like, again, it's not shrinking down your desktop screen to show on your mobile. It's just reformatting it, but it's not thinking about user experience at all. Okay, so font size matters when you're designing for mobile. Number 4, when you are designing for mobile first, the order of the elements matters. Okay, when you're looking at your desktop view and you have images or videos on one side, and then a form or like a headline or a quote from somebody on another place, and then like your social proof in another section. When you click to look at the mobile view, all of those elements might be rearranged and not in an order that you like. Like, for example, if you have an image of yourself on your website, your image might be in the top of your mobile view, and it might take up like 60% of your mobile view, and then like half of your headline is underneath. If people see that when they click over, they're like, dude, what kind of crap website is this? And they'll bounce. Okay, so you might even need to remove some elements. So the order of the elements matters. Think about it. It's got to make sense. If there's a headline and a subheadline, a video, should the video be above or below the subheadline? A lot of it depends on looks and what makes sense for whatever you're trying to communicate to the particular customer. Where's the call to action? Is it above the subheadline, below the subheadline? Is it at the bottom of the page? Is it at the top of the page? Of like your phone page? Like, where is it? The order matters. And not that like necessarily like which one goes first, as you can tell by my explanations, but does that flow and it makes sense, and the words that are being communicated flow clearly? Like, a lot of people will put a subheadline before the headline, which it could make sense if the wording is appropriate, but it might not. It all matters in how it shows up when you hit that home screen on your phone. Okay, and element number 5 when it comes to designing for mobile first is, if you can, try to get the call to action button above the fold if possible. So what does that mean? So when you have your phone screen, the call to action button should be either at the bottom or at the top, but it should be available without people having to scroll. Okay, you don't want people to scroll to see your call to action button if possible. Sometimes there's a lot to communicate, and there's some indoctrination that needs to happen on the website, which is fine if the button needs to be lower, but there are much higher opt-in rates when a button is above the fold, because if you do enough indoctrination in your ad, when people come over to the site, they'll be like, okay, yes, this is what I want. Click the button and opt in to whatever it is that you're offering. So that is item number 5. So again, the 5 tips to designing for mobile first are these. 1, design in a single column. 2, create less white space. Get rid of that giant logo on the top. 3, pay attention to your headline and subheadline. What is the wording in those, and what is the font size of those? 4, order the elements. What comes first? The headline, the subheadline, the video, the call to action. How does it look? Does it look enticing, professional? Communicate clear results. And number 5, make sure, if possible, that the call to action button is above the fold, is on the home screen when people click through from the ad to the home screen, okay? These points are simple, but they are absolutely critical. And I cannot even tell you how many people get lost in the fray of ads because they come to a website that looks like garbage. And it's not your fault, okay? It really isn't people's fault. People just don't think about mobile when they need to, okay? And even more and more organic traffic is becoming mobile centric. So it's so important to think about it. So if you aren't sure if your website or funnel is built well for mobile, then here's the tip. Because even on the editor view of like WordPress or ClickFunnels, the view of mobile shows way more than you actually see on a phone. Like it's like really, really, really long. And besides that, it doesn't even show up how it'll show up on your phone. What? Yeah, right. There's different kinds of phones: Galaxy, iPhones, LG, whatever. I mean, there's tons of brands of phones. So like, and even within one brand, there's different models of that phone. So how will it show up on yours? Okay, that is important to figure out. One thing you can put in the website, of course, and see how it shows up in yours. And I recommend that everyone does that before they launch a funnel. But that is a kind of a clunky way to check it out. So there's another way. Here's the tip. Without pulling your phone out and going to the website URL, in your desktop Chrome browser, go to your site and right-click anywhere on the screen and go to the word that says inspect. Okay, once you hit inspect, there's an icon. It's usually on the right-hand side. Sometimes it's on the left, depending on the site. But there's an icon that has like a phone and a tablet. Click on that, and it will send it into responsive mode. The word responsive will be in the middle of the top of the screen. Click on that, and when you click on the word responsive, a list of phones will drop down. So like there's like iPhone 6, 7, 8, iPhone 10, Galaxy S7, a Pixel phone, a Google phone. There's all kinds of phones listed that are options there. Go through those options and see, how does your website show on different types of phones? Okay. Now, I know this is seriously ninja and seriously cool, but as you go through it, what do you see? What do you like about it? Is your message easily communicated? Is your call to action button easily seen? Is the headline a decent size? Does it look professional and like you know what you're doing? All of these are really important questions that you need to ask as you look at your site on the mobile view. Okay? Because here's the truth. Before people read anything, they judge you by the look of your site. That is just the truth of the matter. So an unthought through mobile view is one of the biggest causes for people bouncing, because if people don't take the time to design for mobile, when someone gets to the site, they're going to be like, man, this person doesn't know what they're doing. Or this obviously is not something that interests me. I'm interested in something more professional. Okay, so take the time to do it. Do yourself a favor. It'll save you ad dollars by designing for mobile first. Just this morning, I was talking to a client whose website was absolutely gorgeous. When we pulled it out on the desktop view, her images were crisp, and she had a background image, and her brand colors were there, and her logos were gorgeous, and everything was just spaced out perfectly. It was seriously gorgeous. I asked her to pull up the mobile view, and when it showed up, she actually laughed. And this is why. The template that she built her funnel from was what showed up. Her logo was gone. Her original pictures were gone. Her headline was different. Her brand colors had changed. They had gone to the template. It literally looked like a completely different site, because everything she had built and the way she built it, she'd actually built it for desktop only. Okay. So any traffic that she would have sent there, they would have literally thought that they were in the wrong place, because they were, according to how it was designed for mobile, even though it was the exact same URL. Okay. This is so important to understand, guys. People just don't think about the mobile view. And again, it's not your fault if you fall into that category. The assumption is that your website is smart, your phone is smart, and people is smart. People are smart. So why worry? But you should worry. Actually, I'm going to take that back. Don't worry, just be aware and prepare. You can make your funnel or website mobile savvy in just a few moments, okay? So, as a reminder, and as my final piece of this, designing for mobile is critical always, but especially if you are running paid traffic. Okay, remember that 95% of traffic is mobile. So you have to think in terms of mobile. How do your posts show up in mobile? How do your ads show up in mobile? How does your website and your funnels show up on the mobile view? All of it. You have to consider that as you are creating your content, okay? It will save you money. It will save you grief. It will save you from being a laughingstock amongst your community. It is just absolutely essential that we focus more on designing for mobile first. Okay, so here's to stopping optimizing for mobile and designing for mobile first. All right, you guys with me? I know you are. So I would love to continue the conversation about this with you. So this is one of the harder concepts to share on a podcast because it's more of a visual thing, but I'm talking about it. So I know that the concepts that I've taught are true, but let's have a conversation about it. I'd love to see screenshots of your site's mobile view and have a discussion about how to make it more mobile friendly. So we're doing that in the Facebook group. So go ahead and pop over to the Facebook group and join the conversation that we have weekly there on the podcast topic. Again, this week we are talking about mobile views. Would love to see pictures of your website, give you feedback on those, and get your insights too. What did you learn as you went and did the Google inspect, looked at the responsive mode and saw what it looks like on an actual phone, okay? Seriously, such a blessing to be here with you today. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to listen to the Marketing Matrix. As a reminder, the Marketing Matrix Toolbox is seriously becoming one of the coolest marketing resources on the planet. It is chock filled with resources for any marketer wanting cutting edge techniques that are going on and looking for new ideas to spread the message of their product or service out there. So guys, get out there, focus on mobile view, go and check out your websites and your funnels and see where they're at. Again, it's okay if they're not designed for mobile. People just don't think this way. And I'm trying to get it out there that we need to think mobile first. Okay, it's going to change the trajectory of anyone, really, because more and more traffic is going mobile, but especially those that are running ads. All right, guys. Again, I'm Lisanne Murphy with the Marketing Matrix. It has been a pleasure joining you, whether it's in your kitchen, in your car, in your living room, in your office, wherever it might be. Thanks so much for joining me. See you next time.